Welcome to the Timescales Interviews. I'm Grego, your host. Today we have two very special guests, Jay Doyle and John Osachuk from Desolate Souls Studios. How's it going, guys?
Yo, what's up? Thank you for asking us to come on. It's been a pleasure. And John, how you doing, bud?
I'm really great. Happy to be here. Always fun to see Timescales in the chats when we're hosting a show, and nice to put a face to the name.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Well, thank you. I've been looking forward to this. I'm really curious about your show, and I appreciate your time and letting me toss out some questions to you. So this interview is being conducted in California and in Canada. Is that correct, that you guys are right here in North America?
Yep, we're in Winnipeg, Canada here. I'm
Right
in the
middle.
northern part of Winnipeg, and he's on the southern part of Winnipeg. So
Okay, all right. Folks, so you're in the central time zone, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. All right, cool. Pacific here. So folks, Jay and John can be found quite frequently doing live streams on YouTube, and I myself have been very much enjoying them. Lately, they've been interviewing a good number of people in the comic book industry, and we're going to get to that. And we're going to get to several things. But what I am curious about is your upcoming graphic novel is titled Atlas of Sidonia. Would you care to elaborate on that, please?
I'm going to let John take that because this is come from his. Am I coming up on the screen? Because I don't see myself coming up.
I see you. I see you, Jay.
Okay. I'm going to let John take
it
because this is,
Am I clear?
Am I clear? Is it on me?
Yeah.
It's going to be on me. I'm the diva. No, this is John. This is John's story that I think it's really important for him to tell because he's had this in his head for 20 plus years, and he's got this incredible, he's got this incredible story. So I want him to give the synopsis here and tell his story. So take it away, John.
Thanks, Jay. So yeah, as Jay said, the story has been in development for over 25 years, even really like parts of it even longer. So the title of it, Atlas of Sidonia, is the name of my two children. And the concept is that the story will play out in the world of Sidonia, and each volume of that we produce will explore a different part of the world, which will form an atlas of the world. And it's this first book, because I'm kind of getting ahead of myself with speaking of future books and not the book that we're working on currently. This first book serves as a prologue to the greater story. And I'm a big fan of epic fantasy novels. And if you're familiar with those at all, typically they're done in
John, you froze up
multiple books to make a collection, right? To tell a greater story. And that's what Jay and I are doing with this. So that when I said it serves as a prologue, it's literally that. So it's going to introduce the world of Sidonia and a bit of the mythology. And we will explore, how do I describe it? Like a defining moment in time is the principal story that the book will explore. And I compare it to, for example, when Christ died, the calendar was reset, right? Like there's the before and after. And this moment in Sidonia's history, this defining moment, is what our first book will be really locked in on. And then we have a couple of other, like the opening and the closing of it, give a different perspective of the world and what we're doing. But yeah.
Okay. And
very well put, partner.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. And when is the first one expected to be out?
That's a good question.
Okay.
We just lost our colorist, so we had to find a new colorist, and so we're in the process of penciling, which was my job here. In the beginning, I was doing penciling and inking, but that would have taken a really long time to do, like 56 pages, 56 to 60 pages. And John thought it was a good idea to take that off my plate and just work on the penciling. And so I'm challenging myself to get away from your traditional North American comic book style. I'm trying to mesh this North American and manga style together so people can look at the book and say, that's Atlas of Sidonia, that's different than any other book, and that's Jay Doyle and John Osachuk. Like, those two are going to be the duo that we're going to follow for however long because of our styles. So John and I found an inker, Ernest, and he's doing an awesome job inking, and we have a colorist. Hopefully, I'm just going to confirm that, but we got a new colorist. He's excited to work with us. So we're hoping it to be out probably, I'd say, in the fall. Hey, John?
I expect so.
Yeah.
Mid to early fall, ideally.
Yeah.
We would like to have the book available for Christmas.
Okay.
But, fingers crossed. And then one thing that Jay mentioned of the fusion of Western style comics and manga. And that's something that I want to do with the story as well, because typically in the Western style comic books, your hero is introduced and he's kind of at full power, unless you have like an origin story or something like that where you're getting to know the hero. With our story, the characters are going to have their own storylines in which they develop, but their power is also going to scale up as the story grows. Kind of akin to, say, like a role-playing game where you keep leveling up. So throughout the story, these characters and villains will be leveling up and getting more and more powerful. I'm really inspired by a lot of the manga and anime style action, which is just like epic times 10. And they just scale it up to just amazing visuals. And that's what we're really trying to bring. I mean, our dream is to one day see this produced in animation. And
oh wow,
that's down the road, obviously, but that's the dream. That's kind of our long-term goal. And to be able to see, especially this first book, like the climactic battle of the first book, to see that animated, I don't even know what I'd do. I'd probably cry.
Wow, it sounds very unique and interesting.
That's the plan.
Yeah. So so you mentioned a colorist, and what was the other position that you mentioned?
Inker.
Inker. Okay.
Yeah, you got your pencils, you got your inker, and then you got your colorist. Some people can do all three. Some people get 2 out of 3. Some people just do 1 out of 3. All based on how much time you have and how what your timeline is set for. So it could really that's the other thing, is cost. Right. So
So and you said it's going to be 55 to 56 pages, the first issue.
Yeah, around there.
Well, I like to say around 56, but John will probably get it up to 62.
I could get it up to 100 in no time.
Okay, speaking of that, speaking of that, do you have an editor, or do you require editing?
Yes, we have an editor.
Yeah.
And I enjoy having several pairs of eyes go over the story to make sure that it makes sense, because for me it makes sense in my head, but did I do a good enough job of bringing it to the paper? Now, that being said, part of our philosophy in Desolate Souls Studios is that the art alone should convey the story to the reader without any words. It should be clear of what is happening. And then my job as the writer,
no pressure,
is to provide exclamations to the scenes Jay has drawn so that it has maximum impact. So we don't want wasted. And that's part of my own battle as a writer and my personal ego. I want to see my words on the page, but at the same time, I want to create the very best story possible. So I think I've honestly done about 15 different drafts at this point.
Whoa.
For the script of this book, and every time I'm just paring it down more and more so that when a character speaks or there's like some narration, there's not a single useless word, and that is poignant and impactful. And when the reader turns the page and gets that big splash page, which is a full page as opposed to like no panels on it, just one big image, when they get to that page, because that's going to be something really significant, there might not even be any words on it, but they're going to see that and know, like, oh my God, like now things are going crazy.
Okay. Now, if this is not a spoiler, if I could ask you this, what is the genre and theme?
Epic fantasy.
Okay.
Yeah, fantasy. It's like I've said numerous times, John's story is more of like a psychological thriller fantasy where you're going to be, it's not for kids, that's for sure. It's
okay.
Yeah, it's an unreal story, and I'm really excited to get this out for everyone to read. Yeah, like when we got together for the first time and he started talking to me, because I didn't know who he was, and so we met at a McDonald's and we sat there for 3.5 hours and we were just diving into the story, because originally he wanted to do a script for a video, because you were looking to do a movie script, right, John?
A pilot episode of a television series.
Yeah,
because the story is too big for a movie, and they're like, to try to produce a budget for like an unknown writer for, you know, the Lord of the Rings, no one's going to give me that money. So taking creative control and just taking control of the cost itself, producing a graphic novel is pennies compared to trying to make a movie or a television show. So between the two of us, we're investing a lot of time in this project, and then we've brought in a couple of contractors to work with us, and when the book comes out, it's going to be spectacular.
absolutely. And so like when we and just so like people know, when we got together, that was the original plan, is for me to draw out the script, and I finally just asked John, like, why don't we just do a graphic novel? Like, why don't we do a series?
Yeah, when
and
I first
both of our eyes they lit up, eh, John?
Yeah,
And
totally.
we're like, yeah. So
yeah, because initially I was a big creative hero of mine is George Lucas, who obviously created the Star Wars universe. And one of the things he did when he was starting out was he hired an artist to create like half a dozen to a dozen different images just to give flavor to the world so that people could visualize what he was talking about. Like he had, you know, a sketch of C-3PO, and he had a sketch of a speeder and like Tatooine and the spaceships and everything. And that's initially how, or what I wanted Jay to produce for me. I was going to commission him to give me like half a dozen to a dozen images, and then I was going to make just a little like YouTube video to get some traction to, you know, try to promote it and try to pitch it to a movie producer or something like along those lines. And then I've always been kind of a control freak about it, and not wanting to like hand it over to a studio or an editor or something and have them try to change a bunch of the story. So when he said, well, why don't maybe we should do this as a graphic novel, Mike, I think my brain probably fell out of my head.
it did, bud. It did. You're like, the look on your face said it all. I was just like, yeah, there we go. Yeah. We're ready.
Wow.
We're going to do this. So.
And that was less than a year ago.
Yeah.
That was in June, approximately June of 2022.
Almost July, man. I think it was like near July.
It was just before there's a music festival in Winnipeg called the Manitoba Folk Festival, and it was maybe a week or two before I went to that, because then Jay got cold feet on me.
Yeah.
And I had sent a script and somehow he didn't receive it. So he thought I wanted him to write the script and draw the book and do everything.
Oh,
I was
no.
just some guy with an idea. So he sent me a text saying, you know what? I'm out. I think this is too much. I can't do this. I haven't got a script. And I was like, whoa. And I was literally at the music festival, got into my Dropbox on my phone, found it, sent it. And I'm like, do you have it yet? And then
that's that diva.
He's like, I'm in.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's the diva in me again.
Yeah. Jay's the one that almost got away.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it sounds like this was meant to be, and I wish it was out now because I'm definitely going to buy it. I have to see this, and you know, some of the authors that I've interviewed in the past, not from a graphic novel, but such as novels or audiobook stories, they've kind of clashed just a little bit with editors. And I can't imagine what the relationship would be like between a writer that loves their work, which is obvious, and an editor. But do you believe that the editing process should be kind?
No.
No, yeah,
Really?
exactly. No,
Really?
I think it should be. I think the editor. Did you confirm that editor? By the way, I'm assuming you did with the
I
one.
assume it's going to
Yeah,
pan out.
the editor that we're planning on using has a very keen eye for what we want to put out, and a very intelligent individual. And so if he has it's something like this, you got to park your ego off to the side. It like with this is our first book. We can't go in there thinking we know it all, because we don't. And so we're learning as we're going. Even with our YouTube channel, we're coming in there and like we've made mistakes here and there, but we're learning from it and we're having fun with it. Like this whole journey, I'm enjoying it so much because I'm learning so much, and I'm my bond with John's even closer than before. I consider my brother, and yeah, like I think having a fresh set of eyes telling us what we need to correct on, if any, like, and I'm assuming it's probably small things here and there, will be nice to hear, to be honest, because like you don't want to go in there thinking everything's 100% and then you put it out and then people are like, what is this garbage? So John, you want to touch it more there?
Yeah, I think in anything, the more effort and work you put in to something, the better it'll be. And you need to cede to experts and trust their judgment. I mean, you can have conversations like Jay and I go back and forth constantly about what this panel should look like or this page layout, whatever it might be, but we have the shared goal of producing the very best book. There's a great Spartan quote that the warrior who sweats the most during training will bleed the least during combat. And that's kind of the approach we're doing, where we want to leave everything on the editing floor, and when the book comes out, it's going to be as close to perfect as possible.
Yeah.
So kill my darlings, let's just make it happen.
Okay, very interesting. That's it sounds like that type of open-mindedness is going to be a very key part of your guys' success, because I have always wondered what the relationship is like between writers and editors, and at the end of the day, editing is extremely important. So it sounds like by you putting your trust and openness into that key step, that sounds like a very interesting element of success that people would not be aware of if it was not for you sharing that. So, and Jay, I'm glad that you mentioned your YouTube channel. We're going to get to that here in just a second. I have a question for that. Curious about that as well. But here's something. Let's shift gears just a little bit here. This is kind of a broad, open-ended question. What does the art of storytelling mean to you?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I've read a lot of graphic novels. I've done a little bit of animation, and I watch a lot of animation. And like John mentioned earlier, when it comes to the art, it should be able to tell the story without the dialogue. So you should, like, there's a great cartoon on Adult Swim, and it's called Gennady, I can forget his name now. It's called Primal, and there's no dialogue on it. There's sound, but like you just get sound of the creatures and the dinosaurs, because it's back in the early Neanderthal days, and it's an incredible animation. And there's no, like I said, there's no dialogue, but you understand the emotion, you understand the story, you understand what he's trying to accomplish in each episode of the series. And so when it comes to art, and it's the same thing with writing, because I consider writing an art. So when John and I get together, because we discuss this, oh my God, I don't know how many times a day, because we want this to be the best book that could possibly be done. We talk about the art style, we talk about the writing style, we talk about everything, and we don't take it personally. That's the big thing is when we give advice or critiques to each other, it's to help each other and push each other to become better. And I've seen John's original script, and I've seen the newest script, because he's gone over the script, I think 5 or 6 times since we've been together, just breaking it down and putting out a really, really great story for a graphic novel. And without me pushing him, and without him pushing me, I don't think we would have what we have right now, which is a really, really, yeah. So I think that's the key points to moving forward, is be able to park your ego off to the side. That's like, so when it comes to art, like, I know a lot of artists are really sensitive with their work. And if I was 25 years old, I probably would be sensitive, but I'm not 25 years old. I'm an older man right now. So I know better.
Join the club.
Yeah, exactly. So I know for this book to be great, we have to put out the best art, writing, or the art itself, for the fans to really like. Now, I'm not doing everything for the fans. That's not what I'm saying. Because I'm doing a style that's going to be completely me. When people look at it, they're going to say, "Oh, that's Jay Doyle." And the same with John. When they read it, they're going to be, "That's John Osachuk's writing. That's his storyline," with all these other greats. And not that we need to be lumped in with those greats, but we want to be recognized for that. And I don't know, John, do you have anything you want to talk about that? Because I'm kind of...
Yeah, I mean, in just on what you were saying, we want to be recognized as having a particular style of storytelling and the style of art.
Yeah.
And the story itself will, as Jay said earlier, it's psychological, it's dark. The characters are complicated. The world is complicated and very dangerous. Part of my goal in this project, because like I said, I've had it with me for a long time, is to try not educate, but like enlighten people to the truth that the world is an absolutely savage place, and that people who live in the 21st century in the Western world, primarily, mostly, have no idea how fortunate we are to live when we do, because we live better than 99.99999% of the people in the history of the world. We have clean water. We have lots of food, generally safe unless you start your own trouble. There's no, Mongolian horde about to ride into your city and take away your women and kill you, or any other terrible thing that might come, especially by people. And I really want to explore that dark nature of man and women, because it's in there and it's inside of all of us. But we've become, I don't know if civilized is the right word, but we've, attained a certain perspective that we should actually just be kind to each other. And if we're kind to each other, we can get further ahead and do more together rather than apart. Now, insofar as what storytelling means to me, a fundamental principle I try to follow is a good storyteller should ask questions without providing the answer. That's up to the reader to discern the answer for themselves, because then you're making them think. And I mean, you can answer small things, but in the greater scale, it should be vague. And that's one of the things you're seeing in mainstream media nowadays, especially film and television. The writers aren't doing that. Like I was watching the 3rd season of The Mandalorian recently, and Din Djarin shot down a ship, and then he says, "I shot down the ship," to the other character in the scene, and you're like,
"Oh no,
we know, Din, we were watching. Thank you." And like I love Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. I think like what they've done is great, but at the same time, there's moments where I'm just, did you really just write that? Like we saw, like show, don't tell, right?
So is Atlas of Sidonia going to be set in the present then, or am I asking a spoiler?
In a way.
Okay, you don't have to answer that if that's a spoiler.
No, it's not a spoiler at all. And it can give a bit of depth to the story and the world at large.
Okay.
There's two main storylines or themes that we're exploring, and it's the dichotomy of civilization and the wild. So think of Greek mythology. You would have Athens, Sparta, you'd have Corinth, and in those cities, men ruled, and you had all the problems that existed with corrupt men and any other kind of thing that might happen in a city. So that's one part of what we're going to explore. But at the same time, when you leave the city and you go out into the wild places, now you're at the power of the gods and monsters. And there's a new danger, something almost simpler than the conniving nature of people, right? There's no more scheming now. Now it's just pure survival. So our protagonist, who will be introduced later, he comes from that savage land. And he's going to eventually get into civilization, but he's going to be hardened by living in this land of gods and monsters and becoming this incredible warrior, and then getting caught up in the dynamics of civilization and politics, and that the kind of Game of Thrones battle to be on the top and have all the power.
Okay, very interesting. All right. Now, Matt, you're really making me wish this was out. Now I have got to see this. What is this something that we're going to be able to order direct, or is it going to be at the big online booksellers?
Well, we have a couple plans here. John and I want to create our own website where you can buy the book. We're going to have a campaign for a limited time, and then the plan is to move forward after that, and it's going to be sold in bookstores throughout the world, so, and comic book shops. So if you want a book and you have like perks, we're going to have you get so many $1,000, you're going to get the map of Sidonia with it. You get to another $1,000, you might get a print of a character, and then and so on and so on. So that's what we're going to have with the campaign. If you're going to wait for it just to be in bookstores, all you're going to get is the book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
okay.
And then we also are going to have, for the first book, we'll have 3 separate covers available, and there'll be a bundle where if you're a collector, you could purchase all 3.
Okay.
And then, that might come along with also, say, a Desolate Souls Studios hat and maybe like a coffee mug or something. That'll obviously be a premium price because you would get all this swag. But there will also be the option of the purchase of a single book. But if, people want to support more, then there will be other options that they can do.
Oh, plus we'll be signing the books when we do the campaign through our website.
Okay. So you can actually subscribe to the series and as a bundle and have them shipped as released.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Do you know what the expected release time is? I subscribe to a Doctor Who comic series. It's kind of a spinoff where a group of people have the rights to one of the characters from Doctor Who, and I know they had done they had done a startup, and then they expected to release on a certain date, and then it was delayed. I think actually it was delayed by COVID originally, but it ended up running a little bit more behind. It was supposed to be every 3 months, and I think it ended up into every 6 months, which I'm not complaining because I still love them when they come out, but they ran into some challenges. So initially, what would be your goal for releases? Would it be, let's say, volume 1 this Christmas, volume 2 next summer, or volume 2 next Christmas?
Well, it all depends on the sales of the book, because John and I both have daytime jobs.
Mhm.
So we're trying to do this in our spare time. So when I'm done and I come home from work, I'm penciling and laying out panels and thumbnails, and John's writing whenever he has an opportunity to, like whenever he has the chance. So if we do sales really well, because like I'm hoping we can just do the book full time, and if that's the case, then we could get it out maybe every 4 or 5 months, or 6 months,
Okay.
depending on how elaborate the story is. So I think that's the plan that we want. Now, if that's going to happen, we have to
Mhm.
wait and see. So
It's
it
all
all
about
depends on,
sales.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Very good. All right. Boy, you have really got my curiosity up now. All right, so we're going to switch gears here. This is probably the last extremely broad, open-ended question, but I'm asking you exactly what is Desolate Souls Studios, and I'll tell you what my perception was, and I now know that I'm wrong. Okay, when I started watching your live streams, I subscribed to your channel and I clicked on notify for uh, live notifications.
Mhm.
And thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And that works really good on YouTube. So at first I thought, okay, Desolate Souls Studios uh, is a really high-end audio setup. I've seen that room that you guys had there, and it looks like
Yeah.
a radio station. Okay, I've worked in
Yeah.
rooms like that, and I thought, okay, these guys are pros at interviewing uh, comic book fame. Okay, but I'm I'm not exactly correct, am
No, we had you fooled on that one.
I? Thank you.
No, we have a couple of friends here that asked us to do come to their podcast and do an interview with John and I, and we had a great time. So John and I thought, how can we get our book out there? And because we're not mainstream, we're not Marvel, we're not DC, we're not Image, we're not any of these big name companies. So we have to get out in the world and promote our book by ourselves. So I started watching YouTube and started seeing some of these creators promote their book on YouTube with their own channels. And plus there was a gentleman named Eric Delay who was promoting his book, and he was getting huge sales by being
Mhm.
on YouTube and stuff. So I'm thinking, well, maybe we should just do the same thing. And as uncomfortable as I was thinking, I don't know if I want to put myself in camera, I don't know if I'd be any good. Like I'm overweight, so like I'm not what I used to be. So and especially after watching that episode, John and I are like, oh man, we're big bastards. So so we're
I can relate to everything that you just said.
yeah. So we're like, well, let's give it a try. So we went back, we did it like a kind of like a promo video, and we had fun with it, and we're just John and I are just being ourselves. We're trying to be genuine, we're trying to just do our own thing, and if people like us, like us. If they don't, then yeah, sorry, like, that's who we are. So it kind of went from there, and we came up with the name Desolate Soul Studios before that because we wanted to have something that really resonated with people. And John and I both have gone through quite a life. Not everything is easy, and we've gone through some really, really rocky spots in our life where I've almost committed suicide. And I don't want to speak for John, but John's gone through some really difficult times, and we still go through some difficult times. So we wanted to have something that hit home, not only for us, but when people come on, they were like, these guys, it resonates with them. They sit there and go, wow, this is really hard hitting. And so we wanted to get to know the creators. We didn't want to just have these people come on and talk about their book and talk about the fluffy stuff and everything's great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then they just forget about you when they leave. We wanted to get to know the creators themselves and put the limelight on them, but hit them with hard hitting questions and really get inside and know what got you to the point where you're going to be resilient and push through this dark period of your time to create this book. And so that's what we do. And we came up with the name Desolate Souls, and then we just kind of had studios on the end, because we have gone through these dark periods in our lives. And so and now we're doing something that we're passionate about, and we are really, really excited to put out there for the people to read. So every person that comes on, and everyone that's in the back room after the interview, have said, this is one of the greatest interviews I've done. You guys are
Nice.
great. I really enjoy this. It's because it's allowing them to be themselves and open up. Because some of these creators put on this kayfabe stuff. They create characters and portray themselves as certain individuals and stuff. So we want to get to know the person behind the mask. And John, I don't know if you want to add something to it, because I'm kind of rambling on here, but that's
really
basically
good.
that's basically what we're going with. And we want to just show people that we're just two guys that are really wanting to know people, and the people that get to know them. They get to see a different side. They get to hear things that they didn't get to know from these creators, because some of the creators we've had on are really big names, and they hear stories, and they hear stories about these creators, and they're like, wow, I didn't know that about this individual. I didn't know about that. So like John and I have this really good yin and yang thing going, where I kind of bring him in, I make him feel safe and feel warm, and I get them talking a little bit, and then John comes in with his articulate historical question or statement, or some kind of really good motto or whatever, and he hits them from a different angle. So we kind of come in from two different points, and people are just like, oh, and it kind of just throws them off. Then we reel them back in, and they get some thinking a little bit, instead of just going through the casual promo bit, which you see in a lot of these channels. So go ahead, John. I've been talking too much, so it's I'm the diva, I know that, but like, you're the long shot, so go ahead there, bud.
Yeah, I mean, you said it all quite well. Like Desolate Souls Studios is like a dream that Jay and I shared without knowing that we shared it before we met.
Yeah.
And it's something that has become a reality. And I love talking to people. Like, I will often go out by myself to the bar, and like, whether it's to watch a hockey game or a football game or something, and it is inevitable that I will be talking to people around me, getting to know them and talking about what's happening. So that's really the energy that I strive to bring to our show, where Jay's talking to them and I've introduced myself, but I'm just kind of sitting there listening, kind of waiting for my moment to come in and, join the conversation. Every now and then there will have a guest on that I'm like, that I've found and brought in, that I'm really excited for. So then you can't really shut me up. But, we just want to have an honest conversation with people. And as Jay said, allow the audience to see a different side, because it's hard, and you need to be brave to be yourself and to be vulnerable. And that's what we want to do. We want these creators to come out and, surprise the audience and reveal something that isn't out there, and just provide a space for that creator to connect with us, because it's just us talking, but there'll also be the chat happening because we're live on YouTube, and the chat's asking questions, or, they're just excited about what's going on. And we are the vehicle that provides that for the fans of these artists and the artists themselves.
Yeah. Okay. I look at it like, I'm the bartender that's just ready to serve drinks and listen to your story. And John's that cerebral ninja that just comes in behind you and just throws this hard-hitting fact or historical.
I've got the credit card.
Yeah. And so I honestly, I wouldn't change it for the world. He's my brother, and I'll fight to the end of the world for him. We've got to know each other really well. We have a lot of similar tastes, and he's a great family man, and I can't say enough about him. Like, he's a great guy. So, and he's got this beautiful story to tell. So,
cerebral ninja, I like that.
So, my new handle.
There you go. Well, as an interviewer, I have to tell you guys that I admire and highly respect your format and your ability to interview people. And I would be very surprised if there is a program as good as the job that you guys are doing at interviewing
Thank you.
this
Thank you
comic
so
book
much.
fame. So
that
and
means a lot. That truly does mean a lot. I appreciate
well,
that.
I've been around the block with this. When deciding to start a YouTube channel again, I had one about 20 years ago. I don't even remember what was on it, but I experienced the same thing that you mentioned of the initial fear of being on camera and what have you. And the interview thing can be really scary some of the time. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the things that you learn is absolutely amazing. And it's wonderful fun, and the way that you guys are doing it is mighty impressive. So now I think that you have pretty much already covered this, but I was going to ask. I'm sorry, I said no more broad open-ended questions. But
No,
I have
shoot
no
away,
broad
shoot away.
open-ended questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask this: what are some core values of Desolate Souls Studios?
I'm gonna
Wow.
let John answer that because he
Okay.
came up with them. But first he does that. I want to shout out to everyone that in our chat. We love everyone in our chat. They're great. They're great supporters. We appreciate everyone that's subscribed to our channel, and we're hopefully going to make you guys proud with our book because it's a really, really great story. So John, take it away about your core values.
Definitely thank you to all the people, and Jay and I promised to provide a book like an ongoing story, not just one book, but something that you can invest yourself in for, hopefully the next 10, 15 years if everything goes according to plan. However, back to core values. My wife is a genius, and she told me that we,
He's
as
a
Desolate
genius
Souls
too.
Studios, need to have our values. And she could write a book on values, and she's studied values to an amazing extent, like personal values of our family, values of this, values of that. So of course, Desolate Souls Studios requires values, and we have 3. And the first one is authenticity.
That was 4.
3.
It's 3. Okay.
There's kind of 4, but there's really 3 big ones.
Okay.
And the first one is authenticity. And it's us being our authentic selves, which comes across in our interviews. But it's also being authentic with our customers, and being honest about what we're doing and how we're doing it and where we're at in the project, so that we're not trying to do a money grab and steal anybody's money and a little get rich quick, make $30,000 or something. We're in this for the long haul, and the only way to do that is if we're authentic about it and straightforward with everyone. That's why in all our business dealings, we're just direct, we're to the point. This is what we're doing. If you want to work with us, great. If you don't, great. Carry on with your life. We're going this way. We have things to do. The second one, and this is kind of obvious given what we're doing, is creativity. And that's in all aspects. We're creative about getting guests on the show. And the show has become something very big. It's kind of crazy the time it takes for us. But then to the story, Jay wants to be creative with his art. I want to be as creative as possible with the writing. And then those two things come together. And if we're not creative, they're just going to bounce off of each other and go the wrong way. And it's not going to come together. And the key for the story, and this is art in general, is we've spoken about it already, but you really need to surrender your ego. If you want to make something great, you have to let that go. I mean, it can kind of serve as a fuel, but you just have to, especially in collaboration. It's one thing, I think, if you're like Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci and you're working alone on something, your ego can probably run wild. But when you're working in a group, you have to just come together. And then the final one is commitment. And that's the commitment to our customers. When they buy a book, we're going to deliver. We're never going to launch a book and not deliver it. it's a commitment between Jay and I to work together and promise ourselves that we're going to produce the best story possible, the best art possible, the best book possible. And it's, just a commitment to our lives. Like, this isn't something that should be all consuming. It's a passion and it's a business, but we're committed to living good lives. And
Okay.
It's also a commitment to our YouTube channel, where we're not going to be stagnant and just have the same guests on here and there. We're going to reach out to comic book creators. We're going to reach out. We're hopefully to get bigger and bigger names, but we're also going to dive into other creators outside of the comic book field, where we hear about their stories and why they went that route. And so we're always thinking outside the box, and we don't want to be stuck in one place. So,
okay, very good. Glad I asked that question. So thanks for letting me throw in another broad open-ended question. That was very, very interesting.
No problem.
Okay. One of the things that I always wonder about when meeting talented people such as yourselves is it something that just suddenly came on one day, like a light switch or a toggle switch, or were you guys interested in storytelling and art since you were young?
Okay.
John, you want to take the first lead on this one, because my answer is probably going to be a little longer than yours.
Okay, yeah. That's a challenge.
Diva.
For me, I've been creating stories since I was a very little kid. When I was 5, I always loved having stories read to me, obviously, but I would make elaborate stories while playing with my toys. So I was a big fan of He-Man when I was little, and Thundercats and all those classic 80s toys. And I would create these stories, and then halfway through, like, Castle Grayskull would fall over and there would be a twist, and I would start telling my mom about what was happening, or she would be sitting there listening to me because I was obviously talking out loud. And she would be looking at me with bafflement of what I was coming up with. And then once I learned to write, I would start writing little like monster stories or little horror stories, and I would draw pictures of, like, battles and wars and different things like that. But the desire to be a storyteller is something that has always been in me. The struggle was to have the confidence to pursue it and put myself out there into the world, as we've been speaking about, like with the YouTube, of being seen. And as a result of that, I kept myself secluded and didn't share my stories with people. And that was always something that bothered me, because it was my goal. I felt like that's kind of my destiny. Why I'm here on Earth was to tell stories and inspire people, as I was inspired when I was young, reading Forgotten Realms and Tolkien and all the other great writers who create these magical worlds that you can lose yourself in. And here we are now, and I'm 44 years old. I'm turning 45 at the end of May, and I'm finally producing my first book, and I'm doing it my way, and I have a great partner, and we've brought on amazing talent to help us make it happen. And in hindsight, I really wouldn't do it any other way.
Beautiful. Okay.
Well, for me, I played a lot of sports. That was my main thing. I played everything. I did everything. I had opportunities to pursue a lot of things, but there was this side of me when I was like 11 years old. I always had comic books. I had the Batman, Spider-Mans, but and there's always the TV shows, and there was Star Wars, which is a huge epic moment in my life when first time seeing that on the big screen. So and the first person that I really was loved was Darth Vader. He was such an epic villain, and I was just like, wow, I would love to be able to create villains like this. So I playing a lot of sports, but there was a side of me that always wanted to draw and create, and I started drawing when I was very young. In elementary school, I would do these little, instead of doing a written assignment, I would do a drawing assignment. And my teacher would be like, you're really good at drawing and telling your story with your art, but I need to see you write stuff down. I'm like, no, I don't want to write stuff down. But going through school, it was tough because, like, again, like it was a different time. I'm 51 now, so like growing up in the late 70s and 80s, well, mostly the 80s, like reading comic books and telling people that you were a comic book fan and stuff like that, you were considered a nerd, and you couldn't show that side. And so I was always afraid to tell people about that. I had these group of friends that we would, like, on the weekends, if I didn't have any sports, we'd take off downtown and buy comic books and everything. And when I was 11, I got introduced to the Uncanny X-Men and John Byrne and Chris Claremont, and I dove into that storyline, and I wanted to create these characters. So I started drawing them all the time, especially Frank Miller's Wolverine series, the 4-part series. I used to draw it all the time. So I started getting into art, started drawing a lot more. And I had teachers, really, really great teachers like Mr. Stock and Miss Duncan. Mr. Stock was my grade 8 teacher. He was also our art teacher, and he would sit there and say, Jay, you have a talent, you should continue this. And I would just draw. And then when I got into high school, Miss Duncan got me into art, drawing, still life and everything, and learning the process of actually drawing, but also getting into animation, learning how to do cell animation, shadow, all these different aspects of art. And I was just, it blew my mind. I was just blown away by it. When I I didn't graduate high school. I kind of dropped out. But when I dropped out, it kind of got lost because life happens, and you're wanting to get involved with the social life. You're meeting girls and you're doing your thing. But I always drew on the side. So I kept drawing. I was a paramedic for almost 15 years, and then I got in a severe car accident that caused a brain injury and a severe neck injury. And so I had some concussion issues and some I had trouble focusing, and like I didn't know what to do, and like knowing that, like, the health and know what's going on, I'm like, okay, I got to start doing like crosswords and everything. And then I realized, like, I love drawing. Why don't I do that? And maybe that will help me relieve the anxiety, the paranoia, and that depression. And so, and the depression I've always had because I never loved myself. I always hated myself. I didn't like the person who I was. And so I started drawing, and after about 6 or 8 months, I think it was about 6 months, and the school that I work at, one of the teachers saw my drawing, and she's like, "What is that?" Like, she's like, "Why aren't you teaching kids how to draw? Like, what the heck? Where's this talent been?" And I'm like, "Oh, I just doodle here and then." She's like, "Oh my God, you need to do this." So I started drawing more and more, and I got asked to bring my portfolio to the one of the Comic Cons, and Marvel reviewed my portfolio, and I'll never forget it. The guy was incredible. He was super nice, and I remember him asking, "So what's your expectation?" I'm like, nothing, because I knew I wasn't as good as some of these comic book creators. I wasn't there yet. I knew I was just at the beginning stages. And he opened up my portfolio, and he's going through it, and he goes, "So where did you go to school?" I'm like, "I didn't go to school for art." And he's like, "Okay." And he goes, "Well, how long you been drawing?" I'm like, "Oh, like 6 months." And he's like, "All these were done in like 6 months?" And I had about, I don't know, 30, 40 pages. And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, okay. And he's like, "Okay, this is what I want you to work on." And so he gave me some tips to improve my artwork. And he's like, "I'm going to put your name in a separate category over here." And I'm like, "Okay." And he's just like, "This is what I want you to do. This is my email. I want you to contact me and keep working on your art." So I kept working on my art. I was watching David Finch on YouTube and learning from Clayton Barton, on his YouTube channel, and doing it every day. I was doing about 6 to 10 hours of drawing, trying to get better at it. And I'd be sending him pieces in, letting him review it. And he's like, "Oh, I really like this. I like that." So they sent me a Deadpool sample to do. And I had to do the layouts. I had to do like the paneling and everything like that from the script. And I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I can do this." And I knew I wasn't ready for it. And I was really hesitant to pursue this full time. And I knew there was going to be a lot of pressure doing all these things and get them done on time. And I was just like, "I don't know if I can do this." So I sent out an email back saying, I don't know if I can do this. I'm being honest with you. I could maybe do, some prints or whatever, but I'm just being bluntly honest. I don't think I could do layouts. So as time went on, and then I think like 2-3 years later, I'm at work, and a friend of mine, she came up to me and said that I know a friend that knows a guy that's looking for an artist. Can I send him your name? I'm like, sure. I have no problem with that. So she sent my name to John, and John contacted me, and then that's how we got. And I was like, after hearing John's story, I'm like, this is what I want to do. I want to challenge myself, and I'm ready to do this, and I want to pursue this. So that is basically it in a nutshell.
Okay, yeah. You know what? That is absolutely excellent, and that is so descriptive that you absolutely nailed and completely answered my next question in its entirety. But
Yeah.
and here that one comes. But John, something you said earlier, I wanted to ask you, did you know that George Lucas started out by playing with his toys in his backyard in Modesto, California?
No, I did not.
Yeah. I don't know where I read that. It's been a good number of years ago, but you have that in common with George Lucas. So yeah, he started
Well,
playing with figurines.
if that's the case, I played with He-Man too. Just so you know.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Okay, right. I don't know which figurines he had. See, we're
Sure.
all around the same age. For me, it was my Star Wars guys, which that would have been like but that was in the 80s after Star Wars came out. So
Of course.
right. So let's see here. The next question is, did you have any mentors and people around you that supported your talents and your creative decisions? And Jay has nailed that one. What about you, John?
As a youth, no, because people, especially adults who, they've been caught up in life and the hardship of that journey, they're not typically supportive. I suppose maybe if you grow up in a really wealthy family, which I did not, perhaps they'll like feed that flame. But for me, it was always go to school, go to university, get an education. Like there was never a guidance counselor who was, motivating me to want to do this. I would say if anything, it was my wife, like just being at our cabin on the lake and going for a walk one day. And I had been always toiling away on writing a fantasy novel series. And for any writers who have ever attempted that, that's a really serious endeavor. Just writing one book is a serious endeavor, let alone trying to open up with a series of books, which I mapped out my story, and it would have been 7 novels. So I was always toiling away and not feeling good, because I was always failing at trying to get this thing done. And then one day we were walking, and she's like, you know what you really need to do? And I was like, oh, what's that? And she said, you need to bring in other people. You can't do this by yourself. And that really resonated with me. And then, of course, we had little kids at that point. So they were always very inspiring and motivating me. And I wanted to do something for them. And obviously the dream is to create something that provides, financial stability for them in the future. But in the meantime, just going through this journey and working on this book gets them excited. And they see me chasing this dream. And it's a lot of work. It's nonstop. My brain never turns off. I'm one of those people who are cursed, where the brain, it's always on. So
it's true.
All right.
So my kids see me, and I'm grinding away. I'm working on this. I'm working on that. And I want them to see me pursuing my dream, especially my creative dream. It's one thing to, get a business degree and start a business, and you're selling nuts and bolts and you're making a fortune. But this is something very different, because it's passionate and hard work, and there is no guarantee of success. You just have to go all in and, trust in the gods,
Okay.
So as for mentors for me, I didn't, I had my art teachers, but they weren't they were teaching me everything, but I wouldn't say they were mentors.
Okay.
For me, I know my parents like were pushing me to do art and trying to support me, but like they were, I mean, again, I went through a lot of struggles in my head and a lot of issues. Um, and they're very supportive right now. They're like they absolutely love what I'm doing, and they're happy that I'm pursuing the something that I'm passionate about. But the big mentor for me, there's a few of them. Like John, he mentioned his kids. And for my kids, my one son, I almost lost my one son. And so for him to see that I'm pursuing something with, you know, with mental health, it's always a struggle. So he's extremely happy for me and pursuing my dream. And I'm hoping he sees that. I know he sees that, and I do it for him and my other two kids. And then like I have my partner, she's extremely happy that I'm pursuing something, her and her mother. But I also want to say John and his family have been extremely inviting into their family. Like I worded that wrong, but been incredible with me and allowed me to be part of their family. And John has been really patient with me, and he's I would say he's another mentor of mine, because he's pushing me and allowing me to do something I've always dreamt of doing. So I would say those are kind of the mentors that are the um, pieces that are making me go forward with this. So
Okay, very good. Okay, you know, I had asked you guys for an hour and we are pushing it, but if you would allow me, I have just a couple of more questions
no
here.
worries.
Is that okay?
No worries.
Okay. Okay,
keep going.
perfect. This question, now that I've learned so much more about you guys, it sounds almost ridiculous to even ask at this point. But I'm just going to go ahead and do it anyway. Are you guys YouTubers? or or is the content you're producing just the means to an end result?
I think both.
Yeah, go ahead,
The,
John.
the
Both.
the YouTube channel started off as a means to an end, to develop a fan base and a nice community around us, so that when our book went live, we would have a captive audience ready to support us. But now I can't imagine not doing our YouTube channel, because we get to meet incredibly talented individuals from all sorts of walks of life who are producing incredible art, whether it's as a writer or as the artist of their graphic novels. And as Jay mentioned earlier, we're hoping to connect with people outside of just comics in the future. And to not do that, because I'm a real people person, so getting to meet these people is a real honor and a privilege for me. So I think both.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I would agree on that. Like at first it was kind of like we're going to use this to promote our book, but now looking at it presently, it's yeah, we're I would like to say we're YouTuber interviewers. Like
Okay,
I don't
right.
know, I forget the name. Is it Charlie Rose that did the interviews? You'd have people on in interviews on PBS back in the day.
I think so. I
Yeah,
think that's right. Yeah.
I kind of want to be that Charlie Rose and Joe Rogan style of YouTube, and
Okay.
bring something to people that can like relate to, invest in, and enjoy,
Okay.
and listen to our soothing voices.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that. I can see the interview style being inspired by those talented interviewers. Very interesting. So, okay, we are going to wrap it up here, but I have just a couple of things I wanted to ask. I want to focus on you guys a final time. You've shared a lot of very interesting things that I was not expecting. And I just generally would like to know, is there anything that you'd like to share about yourselves, such as who you are, where you're from? And one thing I'm particularly interested in, do you guys have any crazy secret hobbies like skydiving or stamp collecting?
Okay.
Me?
Tell them about your stamps.
No, I don't do stamp collecting.
Okay, no stamps.
No. What's crazy about me? Well, the correctional services have a great educational system. So when I was in prison, no, I'm kidding.
Oh.
Kidding. I've never been to prison in my life.
Okay.
I collect comics. I read comics. I used to collect mainstream, but I've gotten away from it just because of the way it's being presented and written and drawn. It just doesn't have the same effect as when I was a kid, and it's really too bad. I do like to I still like to play sports. I do play hockey with my kid, which is great. We have a hockey league that we used to play on. But everything is, well, that's not true. John and I get together and we watch the UFC, we watch football together. I know I force him to watch the Atlanta Falcons. But honestly, my focus right now is on what we're trying to put out for the fans and for the people. Again, like I've kind of just hyper focused on what we need to do, and I watch a lot of other hosts and how they present things and try to learn from them. I try to get better as a YouTuber. I try to get better as an artist by watching a lot of other artists. So everything I'm doing right now is for the book and for our channel, to be honest.
Okay, very good. And you, John, stamp collecting?
He does crochet.
Yeah, crochet, knitting, cross stitch. I don't know how I know all these terms. Like definitely the sports and those fun activities. But this is going to be kind of deep, and I didn't even expect to mention it, but I wouldn't say that I'm a religious person, but I would say that I'm spiritual, and I see this existence of life as a path to be traveled, and I am seeking enlightenment. When I was very young, my father, who had grown up in a really terrible place, like a lot of abuse and stuff, he had to go to I think it was called a compensation hospital or something. Regardless, he was injured on the job and he had to go to the hospital just outside of Toronto. And while he was there, he met an Asian man, and he didn't know where he was, whether he was from Vietnam or China or where. But my father was introduced to the Buddha, and he brought that and like kind of gifted this knowledge to me. And it never went much further than that as a youth, outside of this small introduction. And then as I got older, like in the later high school years, I started reading a lot of books on different forms of religion and spirituality. And I came across this quote that said that your introduction to the Buddha is your first step on the journey towards enlightenment. And that really resonated with me at the time. And then I became a big dipshit for like 12, 15 years. But now I am always trying to learn and always trying to be better and not be, get caught up in the judgmental nature of humanity and the tribalism that you see in the world. And part of the storytelling for me, is this continuous journey of just trying to be accepting of the moment. And, I've always been like paranoid and a hypochondriac. Like when I was a kid, I was always afraid of getting sick or dying. Like I couldn't go in a lake because I was afraid of sharks, because I knew the geography that eventually all lakes get to the ocean. And in theory, a shark could get me. I could be in a creek, I could be in someone's pool, and I would still have that anxiety. So even as a kid, I wrestled with my own mortality. And by studying, especially Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, who was a Roman emperor, he wrote this amazing book that he didn't want the world to see. He wanted it destroyed, but thankfully one of his servants saved it, and it's sold millions of copies, and it's studied to this day. And the Stoics perform a daily meditation where they think upon death, and that's something I do now. And it's just kind of like a tool that I use where whether it's working on this project and I'm stressed about that, or I think about my children and they're 7 and 5, and I wonder how much of their life am I going to be able to witness? And now I pray that I live to be 200 years old so that I can see them and their grandchildren and like all these generations. And I know I'm not, but at the same time, I'm living in this moment right now. And to quote Caesar, seize the day, carpe diem. And that's kind of my secret hobby, is pursuing enlightenment.
Okay.
See, this is the point. This is the point where I'm talking about where I am a street guy and he is the
I get it. I see
the articulate smart guy on our channel. I'm just the dumb guy that just draws, and he's the,
as Socrates said, I know nothing.
yeah. There we go.
Well, it's obviously an excellent lash up. So all right, it's we're gonna go full circle here, and we're gonna end where we started with Atlas of Sidonia. Now, in the authors and artists and even actors that I've interviewed, I've found out that in the creative industry, there's no such thing as a Midas touch, where every single thing that you touch turns to gold. And there's something which is known as rejection, where you're trying to do something, it doesn't work. You audition for a television script or even as an actor and get turned down. Even stage actors get turned down. And it's not a 100% success story all of the time. So I'm not really going to ask you if you've experienced rejection, but more broadly, what would you say has been one of the most difficult things that you've ran into with this endeavor, with this graphic novel?
That's a difficult question to answer, to be honest. John, you got something?
Yes. The doubt of whether it will be successful and the time and investment that we're putting into it. Will it pay off? Okay. Yeah. Okay. And just that constant resistance that's pushing against you when you're doing anything creative. That's the doubt. It's the distraction. It's, I need to do the dishes. There's always something that wants to put itself in your way and take you away from what you want to do. What not want, need. What you need to do to make this creative endeavor become real. And I'm a big believer in manifestation, and that if you really pour energy the correct way into something, it will become successful. It might not be the way you expect, but something good is going to come out of it.
That's okay. For me, I second that, but also it's that push it's the push you have to give yourself every day to continue working on this project and moving forward, because it's so easy, especially nowadays, to get stuck doing something else. I'll put it off to tomorrow. I'll put it off from another day. And so for me, it's constantly telling myself, you got to work at this, you got to work at that, you got to do it. If you want to get there, you have to do it. And that held me back for the longest time. And having that fear, like John said, stalled me from being an artist and pursuing my dream. So it's the daily struggles of doing what you need to do. And like I said earlier in the podcast, I love the journey that we're on. There's ups and downs, but that's what's going to make this book great. Is in the end, we're going to reflect on this and say, look what we did. We got through all that. And there's a saying that my mom says. She says, when you look at the mountain ahead of you, don't fear it. Look at the mountains that you've already climbed and know that you can climb this mountain ahead of you. So that's in my head all the time. And I have a Rocky quote that I always follow, but I'm not going to bother saying it because
I like your mom's quote. Can you what was that again? Could you repeat that?
It's like don't fear the mountain that you're looking at ahead of you. Look at the mountains that you've already climbed and know that you can climb this mountain too. So
Mhm.
Okay.
Every
Beautiful.
journey begins with a single step. And as Bruce Wayne's father said, why do we fall down?
yeah.
Just to get back up.
Okay. Okay. Excellent advice. Okay, guys, we're finished up here. There's one thing I forgot to ask that I was curious about. When you are picking the comic book fame, I just call it fame because they seem to be in different areas of comics. How do
Mhm.
you pick the people that you're interviewing?
Well, whoever's available. But I
Okay.
mean, but like there's a lot of names out there. A lot of people have approached us and said, "Hey, I've heard about you guys. Can I come on and promote my book?" And not knowing what they're getting into.
Mhm. Okay.
We've literally had people come on. We've had one female talk about her book and kind of tell a really personal side of her story that she never thought she would tell, and got really emotional. And those are moments that I appreciate because that's someone opening themselves up to us, and that makes us feel good because you feel safe with us. And but a lot of the people that we want to get are the people that have been doing comic books for a long time, or maybe not a long time, but are fascinating creators. They got something in them that makes you want to know about them. Like we
Mhm.
had some really hard hitting or big names lately, and hearing their stories, they all had a theme to them where they grew up in poverty. And I asked this of all our guests, like,
Mhm.
what happened to you in your life that made you want to pursue this and know that you're going to keep pushing forward no matter what, because you don't want to go back to that dark space that you were in? Because I know I went through that, and I know John's gone through that. I don't want to go through that again. And so that's when we ask those questions, you get to really hear a different side of that person, and know how they pursued their dreams. And it's their theme is like a lot of them are poverty or rough family situations, and it's fascinating to hear, that they come through this really tough situation and become these great creators in the comic book industry. So we're open to anyone really coming on and talking to us about their dreams and what they want to create. So we're Desolate Souls Studios for a reason.
We're
You come
Canadian,
from,
eh? Super
yeah, you were
friendly.
Canadian. We've come from really dark uh, places, like I mentioned, and other people. Like, life happens. It's not all rainbows and unicorns. It's
Mhm.
Right.
a
Right.
cruel world. So
Yeah. Okay. All right. Perfect. And speaking of the interviews, I met a very interesting author on your show, Lori Cunningham. I
mm,
was in a chat that night, and I actually got to interview her, and
Awesome.
it was a very interesting chat. So I really appreciate what you're doing because it helped me find somebody that I was interested in interviewing, and in turn, other people will learn from what she said. So thank you for that.
you're
Now
welcome.
yep, there was one final question I was going to ask, but you guys have pretty much almost covered it. So I'm going to ask it, and let me know if you have anything to add. You may not. The final question was, let's say that someone younger or older took a look at this interview in order to find inspiration on things that they would like to do, uh, things that you have done. I believe you're going to be very successful in the future. And when that happens, when someone comes back and says, okay, how did these guys do this? I want to do that. Do you have any best advice that you could give them?
Only
I
cruel advice. It's
yeah,
up
Okay.
to you.
yeah.
Only you will
Um,
Okay.
make what you want happen.
Okay.
this is where I get into the Rocky quote. Um,
Okay. Perfect.
it's not how hard you hit life, it's how hard you get hit and keep moving forward. So I've been hit with a lot of dark things in my life, and I'm still here today. Like I
Mhm.
mentioned, I've almost committed suicide. My son, I almost lost my son to suicide. Um, and so I'm here today to say that there's dark periods, but there's always that light at the end of the tunnel, and you can do it. Like, if you have to talk to someone, you have to find that person, and it could be someone random, it could be someone but it could be on our YouTube. You can always reach out to us. And we say that mental health, like, I'm a big guy, I'm 6'2", like, everyone thinks I'm a cop or a narc. So like, and I have that resting asshole face a lot of the time, but I mean, if you get to know me, and like, I'll be there for people. Like, we need to support each other in this world, and that's being lost. It's every dog for themselves. And so on our channel and on our company and our book, we're putting out this, thrilling psychological fantasy, but it's also for people to see that we've gone through this, and we can pursue our dreams. And like, I'm 51, John's 45, like or 44, turning 45. So like, we're not giving up in life. I feel like I could do this for 20 plus years. And so if they look back at this and say, well, if those guys can do it, if this big schmuck could do it, you can do it. So John, you want to say anything there, bud?
Yeah, to add on to that, while I said that it's really up to you, like, that's the truth. But additionally to that if you aren't where you want to be in life, there is nothing outside of you that's going to actually get you to a better place. The change you require comes from within, and it's not going to be easy. You need to surround yourself with better people. So technically that does come from outside, but it's to change who you are on the inside. Like, if you want to be a winner, you need to hang out with winners. You can't hang out with people who are caught in an echo chamber, who are parroting the same thing over and over, because you're just going to become another parrot. You need to get out of that cage and be with yourself. And you need to go on your own journey and read different philosophers, read history, sharpen your mind. Like Tyrion Lannister says in the Game of Thrones, my mind is my weapon, and so I read to hone it. Like, this is what you need to do. You need to get new ideas into your mind, because you've grown up with your parents and they've put ideas into your head. You've had teachers who have put ideas into your head. You need to figure out which of those ideas are good and which ideas are bad. But it's up to you. And if you're going to be someone who's closed-minded, then you're closed-minded, and you're not really going to escape that trap to, think outside the box. You have to be brave, and it's certainly not easy. Like, as I said, I'm almost 45, and I'm only now realizing my potential. So you have to give yourself time. You have to be patient. And the most important thing is to be kind to people, because if you're kind to people and you're patient with people, you're going to get that back. It's in the Bible, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you can practice that, the world is your oyster. But if you're going to be, a jerk, people are going to treat you like a jerk, and you're not going to get what you want. And you're going to probably say that the world is unfair when it's not.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Absolutely excellent, guys. You have no idea how much I appreciate this. I have learned a lot. Others will learn a lot, and this has been really fun. Where do you guys like to be found? I know when I typed Desolate Souls Studios into Google, the very first link was your YouTube channel, and you guys are both on Twitter as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
You can reach me at Devilish Doyle. And like I said earlier, if you're struggling through something, don't hesitate to reach out. We can help you. John, you can reach him at Atlas of Sidonia. We also have Instagram accounts, but I don't really use that as much anymore. I'm usually on Twitter more than anything.
Yeah, I'm much more active on Twitter.
Yeah, I prefer Twitter. And our YouTube channel. Please subscribe and support us. We promise to bring in some bigger guests. We have some really big guests lined up for the future. And we appreciate everyone that comes into the chat and everyone that subscribes. The book is going to be coming out hopefully this fall, because life does happen. So I don't want to promise anything, but we do love everyone that supports us, and I can't thank him enough. And please be a friend, tell a friend, and get more people to subscribe to us. We want to get at least to 1,000 people, and so we can monetize and really get things going. And if we do, I think we're going to do a giveaway. We might do a giveaway. John said he would do something.
I'll do a striptease on a live stream.
Oh,
And
no.
that is the gift that keeps on giving.
You
Can
want
I
to see John in his kimono.
Can I record it? I need more followers. Okay.
Well, you might get some. You might get some after this. Who knows? Like, we'll promote it. We'll promote it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I will too. Okay, guys. Thanks so much. Stick around. Let me wrap this up.
Absolutely.
Folks, for those of you that have enjoyed this and learned something from it, go ahead and support Jay and John. Thank them for their time tonight. We've been at this for well over 90 minutes. And go and follow them on Twitter. Go and subscribe to their channel right here on YouTube where you're seeing this. We're going to put links right down here, whichever side that's on, and just go click on them and check these guys out. Thank them for their time. And you know what? You can reward yourself and buy Atlas of Sidonia when it comes out, because here is an absolutely in-depth, behind the scenes history story of the creation of it. So here's you a nice bonus. And guys, again, thank you very much. It is really getting dark here. This is what I can only
thank
see
you for having us on. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, we really
Yes, sir.
appreciate you, Greg, and having you in the chat is always a pleasure, and being able to come onto your platform and have you interview us has been spectacular.
Okay, thank you so much. Very, very kind of you guys. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, you too.